the game.
Hi, I'm Kelsa Dickey, the CEO of the Financial Coach Academy and my financial coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. My coaching journey began more than a decade ago with me helping people for free from my dining room table. What was once a little business of mine has grown into a 7-figure company that employs a team of people. My goal is simple, to help you fall more and more in love with financial coaching. I believe financial coaching is the most rewarding way to make a living. If you are an aspiring financial coach or have been coaching for years, I'm here to help you create a business you love that gets your clients massive results. Let's get to it. Hey, financial coach. I am super excited for this episode. We are going to dive into the question that I'm sure many of you have, which is, can people really afford to pay for financial coaching? And I know the question is like, if people are struggling financially, are they really able to pay for a financial coach? Is this really a viable business? Are there really people who not only need help, but are willing to pay for the solution? And the answer is yes, but I'm going to just ask you to buckle up, Buttercup, because I have got some serious thoughts on this topic, okay? The first thing I want to acknowledge is, yes, it's ironic. We help people who are struggling and we charge for it. Just own that. Don't be embarrassed by it. Don't apologize for it. I think it's a very unique design. For just about every other product or service sold in the world, the person selling it has no idea if the person who's buying it can actually afford that thing or not, right? When I buy my iPhone, the guy at Verizon is not asking me about my financial situation first, right? We are in a very unique position, and it requires integrity. And it requires us to be honest about it and not pretend like it's not there. It is there, okay? But for financial coaches, we're looking right at a person's budget when helping them and charging for that, right? I know when we do our very first session with a person, we are looking at all their numbers. And then at the end of that session, we're inviting them to work with us more long term. And I know I could easily look at their budget and decide if that is affordable for them or not, right? We might see that the person has plenty of discretionary cash flow every month. So coaching, you might tell yourself, should be an easy sell, right? Or we might see that the person already has a tight budget and doing coaching would make them slightly more negative every month. And so we don't offer them more coaching. But these observations are flawed. You are making the decision solely based on the financial affordability. But affordability is much more complex of a topic. It's actually a relative term, right? What you consider affordable and what I consider affordable is going to be based on different factors. Your opinion might be different than mine, right? We can't make that decision for the client. We shouldn't be making the decision on what's affordable based on our own experiences and thoughts about the situation. It's ultimately the client's decision to make. For some people, they think, how can I not afford to do this? Take the person with a tight budget. They may think it's already tight, and if I don't get help to change this, it will be tight forever. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see that changing anytime soon for myself, and I'm not okay with that, right? But if I get help, it might be tighter for the next 6 months, but it's already tight, right? But I'll be making progress. So the chances of it being tight still after those 6 months is much less. And right now, I don't even have that positive outlook, and I'm willing to pay for that positive outlook, right? You as the coach have to be able to paint a clear picture of where they will be if they don't do coaching and where they will be if they do. You're simply pointing to them their trajectory of their goals and of their life if the decision is made in one way versus the other. And then you're giving that picture to them to ultimately choose and decide for themselves which path they would rather go down. Also, sometimes affordability is just a mindset. It's this idea of a broke mentality. So many people think that they can't afford coaching simply because they haven't been able to afford things in the past. And this actually breaks my heart when I see it. We have clients who come in and they've been clients for a while, right? Maybe a few months. And so they've got a good budget. They come into a session and they're sort of like bragging to us as their coach. And they're like, "You're going to be so proud of me. Yesterday I had to make this decision and I knew I couldn't afford it. So I said, no, aren't you proud of me?" And like, they really are telling us this because they want to make their financial coach proud, right? And one of the things that we do is we say, how did you make that decision? What did you look at? How did you decide that you couldn't afford it? And my philosophy that we teach all of our clients is that if you want something, the question should be, how can I afford this? How can I find a way to make this happen for myself? Our thought is that if you want something, not being able to afford it is not the reason that should make it so you don't do it. You can choose for any reason that you don't want that thing. It's not the right sort of size, or it's not the right brand, or it's not the right time. You could absolutely not buy something. But there should be a reason not to buy it that is based on the value or the choice that you're trying to make, not simply because you can't afford it. Because if you really want it bad enough, let's find a way for you to afford it, right? But here's the issue is that for so long, people have not been able to afford the things that they want. So that is their first thought. That is what they assume first. For so long, their thought pattern has been, I want that, I bet I can't afford it. It's really hard to change that thought pattern overnight. It takes time, right? I cannot tell you how many times we've found enough to cover our fee plus more money going towards their goals than what they ever thought was possible when they first came in. And because we've done it, we have the proof. It's easy for me to believe that that can be true for every client that I meet with. Right? When I think about the affordability of coaching, I think about the windows that we bought for our house. This was a number of years ago now, but the sales rep was able to tell us how many years it would take for us to break even on the energy savings. But we had to buy the windows up front, of course, and they were not a cheap price tag. So we had a big cash outlay, but it was going to take years before we saw a return on that investment. But I still thought it was a good investment. I still paid for that cash outlay first, even though I knew the benefits that I would gain. Some of them I would feel right away, just like with coaching, and some of them would take time. But I knew that that time would start now if we made the decision to invest, right? How come people think that in order for financial coaching to be worth it, we have to prove that it will make the same amount of money for the client in the same amount of time that they're actually paying the fee? If my fee is $500 per month, I have to find the client $500 per month or it's not worth it? What about all of the intangible benefits? What about feeling better, having a plan, having clarity, not putting out fires in between pay periods, having a goal that you know is just a matter of time before you achieve it, and the confidence that comes from feeling that way? It could simply take longer to recoup the investment, right? And plus, we don't want to just look at the financial benefit part of what we do and not all of those emotional benefits. How much would a person pay to feel better? How much is that worth it to them, right? That's a question you could ask a client. Before someone should even consider the affordability of coaching, they must first see the value in it. That's because if they don't want what you are offering, if they don't see the value in what you can do for them or what they'll be able to do after they sign up for coaching, then it doesn't matter if you only charge $5. $5 will still seem like too much to a person who doesn't want that thing, right? Why would I spend even $5 of my money on something I don't actually want? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not about the actual affordability. It's about the value that you can provide and them wanting that value, okay? Coaches struggle with clients being able to afford coaching, not because clients aren't able to afford it, but because they're not willing to pay for it. And they're not willing to pay for it because the coach isn't great, especially at first, at articulating the value of what you're going to do for them. And so, of course, the client doesn't want it. And that's why it can be hard to get paying clients when you first start without leaning in to your skills at marketing and selling. I had alluded to this video in a previous episode. I talked about how there's a video on YouTube that I absolutely despise, and we're going to rip into that just a little bit in this episode. There is some hack on YouTube who couldn't cut it as a financial coach. And so now he has a video that says financial coaching isn't viable for anyone because it wasn't viable for him. And oddly enough, he's now a business coach to help people be good at business, I guess. So here are some of the things that he says. And the reason I want to take these word for word is because I know you might be thinking these things. You might be hearing them from your uncle this Thanksgiving, right? So I really want to poke holes in each and every one of these. And I will say that it makes me a little sad at the end of the day because my experiences are simply just so very different from this guy. So, all of the reasons he says you can't be good at financial coaching or it's not a viable business, I know I had those hangups really early on when I first started. And instead of accepting them as truth or as a fact or as the way that the world works, I chose to lean into those and say, I'm not going to settle for that. I am going to find a way to overcome this. I'm going to embrace a new skill. I'm going to learn something new. I am not willing to accept this. And my journey has been quite different, which is having a very successful financial coaching business and having coaches who are repeating this process and helping a hell of a lot of people with their money in the process. And it's been very gratifying. So here's the first thing that he says. If you can't figure out for free how to get financially free, money is not going to help you. There's so much out there if you are a true student. That same thing could be said for every other profession or need that a person has, but it's oftentimes only said about money. And I'm not sure why. For example, I know exactly what I should do when I go to the gym and work out. I probably know what a good training schedule should be for myself. And yet I love having a coach. I train with my coach 4 times a week and he kicks my butt. He pushes me harder. There are things that even though I know enough and there's a lot of free information out there for me, and I consider myself a true student of this world. I do. I'm always learning. I'm always curious. I still find value in having a coach, somebody who distill that down for me, help me think through it, help me add more weights, like those types of things, right? It's the application of that free knowledge that's out there that coaches help with. It's not the free knowledge that's valuable. Here's another quote from his video. You've unwittingly chosen a market that will never be able to pay you what you're actually worth. And here's another quote. Someone who is broke, living paycheck to paycheck, can't pay their bills, and is heading for a financial disaster is never going to either, 1, be able to afford you as a coach, or 2, be willing to part with their money even if they could. Here's the thing. The niche you choose is important. We have a whole series of episodes coming up. We're going to explore niching down, why you should do it, some hesitations you might have, examples of really cool niches that I've seen financial coaches take. It has been awesome, and I'm super excited to bring those episodes to you very soon. The niche you choose is very important. These quotes assume that everyone who needs a financial coach or needs help is headed for disaster already, and that is not true. You could absolutely help people for free if you want to. You could offer a scholarship. So you could have a number of clients who are able to pay you and are willing to pay you because they're excited about that investment in their future. And as a result of those paying clients, you have a scholarship, or you provide, some sort of pro bono work, or you work for a charity like United Way has financial coaches. And this is exactly the type of niche that they help with, are those who are really needing support and handholding and a lot of help and maybe aren't able to afford. You can give of your time and expertise in those ways. Here's another quote. They do not possess the required growth mindset, and because of that, can't make the jump in their minds to paying someone to help them either save money or pay off debt. This makes me sad, actually, reading this, because I think about what this person must think of people in general. And nobody is in a fixed state of mind. And just because someone does not possess a growth mindset today doesn't mean that we can't be the person who helps them unleash that growth mindset and unlock it for themselves and find it and begin to use it and begin to love growing as a journey for their life, right? We can absolutely help people develop a growth mindset in our marketing. Your marketing should always be speaking to a person on the front end of their journey, right? So this is where one of the issues people have with marketing is that they're marketing to sort of their client after their client's been working with them for a year and they're really good with their money and it's like advanced concepts with money. And sometimes I think we do this. I know early on I made this mistake. Like you kind of do this because we get bored talking about some of the same things over and over and over again, right? But what we end up doing is overwhelming the person on the front end of their journey. And they think, well, I don't know what she's talking about. So she's too complex of a coach for me, right? Our marketing should always be talking to a person before they hire us. What is that person thinking? What are they doing with their money? What are they not doing with their money yet, right? How are they feeling about their money? What are some of the things that they're telling themselves? What are some of their interests and hobbies and habits and these types of things, right? And we want to speak with them where they're at. And talking about having a growth mindset in your marketing can absolutely create that shift even before they hire you so that when they come to their first session, they are more inclined to understand what you are selling and what you are offering. It can give them a future perspective. It can actually help them boost their growth mindset right from the start and watch what happens when we do that for somebody, right? So often a person comes to their very first session with a very specific problem that they want solved. Very, very normal, right? And oftentimes what we do is we solve that problem and then we start talking about, so what's next? And we start painting a picture of where are we going from here? And now that we've solved this, here's what this creates for us. Here's the opportunities. Here's what you could do. And after that, here's what you could do. And what we are doing is we are boosting their belief. We're showing them that growth is sort of never done. It's a process, right? It's a progress. We show them the growth journey that we've designed. I've shared this quite a few times on YouTube and that sort of thing. And it's this idea of like, how does growth work, right? Where do we start? And we allow them to self-identify on that path. Where are you right now in your growth journey? And they say, here's where I'm at. And they pick. And they can see that there's places for them to go from here. And it really helps them unlock their growth journey, right? Their growth mindset. So just because a person on the front end of their journey, if they're struggling with money, yeah, you know what? They may not have a growth mindset because they're exhausted and they feel like giving up and they don't have a lot of hope. But that doesn't mean they have to stay there. And we can absolutely help people to overcome that. And I feel like that's what we should be focusing on, as opposed to just sort of accepting that if they don't have a growth mindset today, then they're never going to be a good client. And therefore, I'm never going to make a living as a financial coach. Like, talk about really picking one thing and spiraling it out of control, right? Here's what I think a lot of these things point to. I think they show a pretty shitty, if I'm being honest, and sort of non-existent belief in people. That's what I think. And our clients will borrow from our belief. I've said this multiple times. It's probably going to be a theme of this podcast over time. So we need to be talking about a growth mindset in our marketing. We need to believe in people. We need to believe what they're capable of and just what is possible for them, because when they come to us, they may not believe that yet. But that is why it's so important for us to have it. And hearing comments like this, it's a person who doesn't believe that a person is capable of more if we have a good conversation with them and if we hold space for them and if we talk through some of these beliefs that they have. We can talk about the benefits of financial coaching in our marketing, and not just the financial benefits, right? But all of the intangible ones too. We can educate our followers in our marketing on how those thoughts are out there, but why they don't have to think that way. So I would actually like to use these things in our marketing, right? And say, you may have thought this before, but your state of mind is not fixed, right? Educate them in that way. Get them ready for a growth mindset to do more coaching. Another part of the gentleman's video is that he talks about players with money. And he says this is one of the 5 market must-haves. And so since people who are struggling financially are not players with money, they won't be able to pay for coaching, and you'll never be able to afford coaching, or clients will never be able to afford coaching. And I know that I believed this really early on, so I understand where this trap is coming from for this gentleman. I chose to lean into it though. And one question that I have is, how does someone pay for bankruptcy when they have no money? How do they pay those expenses and the attorney to file and that sort of thing? They find a way because they believe that bankruptcy is the right answer for them. They believe that on the other side of that, they will be better off. And it's a trade-off for them, and they find a way, right? We have had clients that from an affordability standpoint, if I were to look at only the numbers, maybe the way I make financial decisions, I would look at that and be like, they can't pay for coaching. I can't even offer that to them, right? But instead of making that decision for the client, I chose to have a conversation with them about that. I chose to acknowledge, I know if you're looking at it from just this perspective, that's what I'm seeing too. Do you see that? What do you think of that? Let them tell you what they think of it. I have had so many clients over the years that it's almost like I want them to make decisions around money based on how a client 2 years into their finances will make decisions about money, which is like saving for things ahead of time and preparing for things ahead of time. But when a client first comes to us, they are not in that mindset. They can be, and they hopefully will be, but they're not right then. And yet here I am trying to have them make a decision with that mindset, right? And my job is not to make this decision for them on whether or not this is worth it to them, okay? My job is to paint a clear picture of what decision they have in front of them and allow them to make that decision for themselves. We had a client who signed up recently, just about 6 months ago. She had recently filed bankruptcy. And she had filed bankruptcy about 6 months before she came to us. And she didn't really have any money, and as far as like in savings, didn't have any credit cards, of course, because she had filed bankruptcy. So the idea was like, how would she pay for more coaching, right? And that wasn't up to us to help her figure that out in that moment. Our job was to talk to her about, here is what we think you could gain from coaching. Here's what more we could do. Here's this picture of your future that we would love to help you realize and see and improve your likelihood of success and that sort of thing. And it really became one of those beautiful conversations where what she shared with us was, in her mind, it was a no-brainer decision. She was doing more coaching. She was going to find a way. And she had said that because of the bankruptcy, she was so deathly afraid of making any financial decision, even small ones. She was petrified that she would find herself back in that position someday, in that situation where she would have to file bankruptcy or something like that. And she was so afraid. She had identified as a person who will never, ever be good with money. She did not trust herself, all those types of things. And she said, I cannot live the rest of my life this way. I have to do this. And she made the decision and she found a way, right? Jill Emanuel, my lead coach, my head coach, when she first started, she shares this story all the time. She was sitting in her car. Her husband had asked her if he could get gas in his car. And she was like, yes, but no more than, I want to say it was like $12 or something like that, because she looked at her bank account and she was like, I only have $12 in our checking account. We're both working 2 jobs. This should not be this hard, like that kind of thing. She broke down crying in her car while she was parked there, called a friend. Luckily, that friend of hers was a client of mine and had been a client for years. Jill and her husband came in. They were clients of mine for years before she became a financial coach on my team. But she would cry, and she tells everybody this, so I'm not sharing anything that she hasn't shared very publicly. She would cry in every single coaching session because it was so tight and it was so hard. And yet on the top of her budget, every pay period was the money for a coaching session, because she felt like it was the only thing that was helping her. It was the only thing. The situation was there anyway. And she felt like our work together was the only thing moving her forward and keeping her from it all falling apart, like officially, right? And so it was absolutely worth it to her. Another client of mine is Catherine. And when she came to me, she comes from a family of immigrants, and sort of what she thought was possible for her life was just different than what she wanted for her life. And When she first came to me, she was making $1,200 per month. And at the time, I had a 1-month coaching program that was $1,250 to do weekly coaching for 1 month. It's like if you have a very specific result you're trying to achieve in a very short amount of time, let's sort of do it, right? And I did a session with her, and I just very honestly said, I love you. I think you're amazing. I see so much potential. And I have to be really honest, it terrifies me to think that for 1 month of coaching, my fee is more than your whole income for the month. And I'm just not sure how I feel about that. I'm curious how you feel about that. And it's one thing, I can own how I feel. And we also want to allow them to invite them to share with us how they're feeling about that, right? And she said, I have to do this. What do you need to see in order to feel better about this? And I said, I want you to know it's going to be hard, and we're going to have to do some very extreme things in order to raise some money and to get your business off the ground and that kind of thing. It's going to be a ton of work in 1 month. And I just need to know that you're ready for that you're not like, I don't want to shy away from telling you this accurately and being honest about it. Like, this is going to be intense for 1 month, but I do think the potential for where you could be 1 month from now is going to be night and day difference, right? And she said, what would you have me do first? Tell me. And I said, here's exactly the 3 things that I would have you do. And they were pretty severe things. It was like, I need you to make $250 right away. Here's a bunch of options for you to do that. There was, again, 3 or 4 things maybe. She said, I'm going to call you tomorrow. I have 24 hours and I'm going to do this. And I was like, great. If you can do this in the next 24 hours, then I think we can move forward, sort of thing. I think we got this. And she did. In 24 hours, the 3 or 4 things that I said, this will help you move the needle right away, but they're going to be uncomfortable. You've got to do it. She did them. At the end of 1 month, she had launched a new business that we fully designed. She already had the idea when she came to me. It was just a very loose idea. She didn't know how to form it. Launched a new business, had clients. And at the end of that first year, she went from, in the first month, again, making $1,200 per month. That was her hourly job that she was making, to having a business that was bringing in $36,000 per year. That was the first year of her first business. She now has a pet sitting, pet walking business that has a team of pet walkers and pet sitters. She makes so much money with this business every single year. She loves what she does. She is a completely transformed person, right? And it's all because we had a conversation about the results and the work involved and also the fee, right? Because I know I can help, but I also know that I charge for this. And that's not anything to apologize for, right? So the idea here is, people don't have to have money to be willing to find a way to pay for the things that they want. And if anything, what they can do when they want something for themselves is incredible. It's oftentimes the thing that they need to light a fire under them and to be, feel emboldened by their dreams and that sort of thing. It's amazing to me how, if we don't have that belief in people, I understand that we probably shouldn't be coaches. We have to have that belief in people, because that's where their progress and their belief in themselves is going to come from at first. So what if the opposite were true? Clients who can afford it, it's an easy sell. Clients who can't afford it, I don't offer it. So the idea here is, just because a client can afford it does not mean it should be an easy decision for them. Because again, we're only focusing on the financial affordability aspect of it. The main part of making a decision around financial coaching and moving forward with more coaching is the commitment aspect of it. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take conversations that we have to have together. And I'll be honest with you, and you've got to be honest with me, right? Like, it's going to take hard work, but the results will be worth it. That's where we want to be focusing the conversation, right? Not just on the expense side of things. So clients who I maybe assume can't afford it, sometimes what I have found is that they sign up the quickest because the pain that they're feeling with their money is the greatest, right? And sometimes when a person is doing okay financially, it's harder to point to sort of the struggles that they're having, because it almost doesn't even feel like a struggle sometimes. We have to be really good about articulating how it's showing up for them in a very detailed fashion, right? At the end of the day, it is not our job to decide whether or not they can pay for coaching. In our mind, we may never pay for something that we can't afford, or we might never put it on a credit card, but we aren't the ones feeling the pain that the client is feeling, right? The client is feeling that. It's the impact that it's having on their life that makes it so they decide whether it's worth it to them or not. And we're not the ones feeling those things. We aren't in their position. So of course, we wouldn't oftentimes make the same decision. We're making smart financial decisions now, right? So blaming it on the clients is actually a scapegoat for us not being more bold in our ability to articulate the value of what we can do for people. Financial coaching is a dying profession. That is literally the quote that came from the video. So that's the other quote. Financial coaching is a dying profession. Financial coaching is like brand new. So how can it be dying? I find the opposite to be true. I think more and more financial coaching companies are coming out. More companies are realizing that financial literacy is just the beginning phase of a person's journey, and applying that education and knowledge is really where financial coaches come in. Behavior changes. It's the fun part, and it's also the hardest part, right? I see financial coaching as the opposite of a dying profession. If you're called to help people in distress, if you have a thriving business, then you can afford to take on free clients. You can offer a scholarship. You can volunteer your time and expertise. And I think all of those things would be really beautiful. And we do so much of that already. I am presenting next month actually for a charity that helps domestic abuse victims. And I'm going in there and I'm coaching all the women on, how to manage their money slightly better during times of transition and all of that. And I am so grateful that I am able to do that. And at the same time, I'm able to make a living that supports my family and help a lot of people as well. And I get paid for that. This does not have to be one or the other. You can absolutely have it both ways. There are a lot of organizations that provide free financial coaching. I talked about United Way earlier. So specifically lean into those or offer to volunteer for those if this is something that you want to give back in that way. So here is your reflection question for the end of this episode. I hope that you will take some time to journal out your answer to this, or talk with a friend about it, or a spouse or a peer, maybe another financial coach. Give this some thought. Please share your answer with me. If you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and leave us a comment. Or if you're listening to the podcast, just take a screenshot and then share that with us along with your answer, and tag at Financial Coach Academy on Instagram. And I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. Okay. I want you to think about a time you invested in something when the financial ROI wasn't immediate, or it was going to pay off over time. So you had a big cash outlay, but the return wasn't going to be immediate. How did you make that decision? What did you think about? What was most important to you, and what considerations did you make? Why did you believe it was worth it? I believe financial coaching is the best and most rewarding way to make a living. I truly love what I do. If you are ready to learn and see how to become a profitable, successful financial coach, check us out at financialcoachacademy.com to learn more about our online courses, free trainings, and events. As always, I love hearing from you. So if you have any questions for the podcast, we'd love to answer them on a future episode. Please submit them at financialcoachacademy.com/podcast. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It would mean the world to me. I will see you next week when we're going to tackle, so how much do financial coaches make? Let's get into it.